Okay, go ahead.
All right. So welcome Dana Knott from the Antioch University Online Library, and we're going to be presenting today on accessible materials, copyright-friendly materials, and finding royalty-free images for your course websites.
So like Bonnie said, our focus is going to be fairly narrow. I'll be mainly focusing on PDFs and accessibility and talk just briefly about the library and PDFs. And Bonnie's going to talk about not only locating images, but making sure that you properly attribute those images to the copyright owner and how to add them to Sakai. But if you have any other questions, I mean, feel free to interrupt or put something in the chat or just email Bonnie or me, and we are more than happy to answer your questions.
And we'll share the video recording and the slides with you. And the slides do have some step-by-step instructions for you, so you don't have to write everything down.
So one thing I want to mention, and I strongly encourage you to check this out, is that there is an awesome universal design learning site in Sakai. And universal design principles not only emphasize creating an accessible learning environment for all learners, but one that engages students and kind of just stimulates them too. So there's a lot of wonderful materials and conversations taking place in that site. I also want to mention that some of the links that I have on this slide were mentioned to me, shared with me by Karen Christ, who is our amazing Director of Disability Support Services. And she is an amazing resource if you ever have questions about accessibility, compliance, or you want advice as to how to create more accessible learning materials. But just clicking on a couple of these with the Universal Design site, you can see that this one is through the University of Washington's Do It program, and that stands for Disabilities, Opportunities, Internet Working, and Technology. So not only is it going to give you the basics about universal design, but it has a wealth of resources. And what's also amazing is that there are webinars, there are tools, there are assessments, so you can have your own checklist of different things that you can do to make your course accessible, but also kind of building in different layers, scaffolding, and working on fully engaging your learners. So definitely an awesome website. Another one that I want to point out when we think about some of our accessibility standards, and I'm gonna pull that one up. We usually rely on WCAG. I usually just go WCAG, and that stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so you have a group, WAI, the Web Accessibility Initiative, that is really focused on providing an international universal standard as to expectations when it comes to accessibility. And Bonnie and I are going to just show you a couple tricks today, but accessibility can be very challenging. We can think about all the components involved in regard to browsers, different types of technology, changes. You know, it's a constantly dynamic environment. And so it is quite the challenge, but we do have to try the best to our ability and also seek out help from our academic technology team or disability services to best support our students. One other.
For 1 second.
Sure.
So just regarding to WCAG and Section 508 and universal design, I've recently been making the case that COVID is making us all act as if we have some limitations and disabilities. We are distractible because of what's going on in our background. We're restless, we're anxious. We are maybe not focused visually or focused auditorily on everything that's happening with us. So I would say if you have designed even your Zoom face-to-face class with people in mind who might have a hearing challenge or a visual impairment or an attention disorder, you will be designing better for all of us at this time,
Absolutely.
not just people with documented disabilities, but especially for people with documented disabilities. But that's my universal plug for.
And I think I'm glad you made that point, Bonnie, because universal design, accessibility benefits everyone. And one thing that we have to keep in mind is that there are some students who will take courses online because they do not want to disclose. They want the privacy of an online environment. So if we don't receive an accommodation letter from disability services, that doesn't mean that I don't have students who have specific learning needs. So we have to keep that in mind that not all users disclose. So one thing with Section 508.
Oh, no, you don't.
Oh, what was that? So Section 508 is part of the Rehabilitation Act. And one thing that it really ensures that there are laws saying that we need to provide accessible content, especially through our government websites. And that's for people with all different needs, whether those are physical, sensory, cognitive, you name it. I like to highlight this site just because it has a number of really nice tools. You can see we're focusing on PDFs in the first half of the presentation. And what's great is that I have a whole page here on creating accessible PDFs. And this could be one, maybe you're creating a document in Microsoft Word and then you convert it into a PDF. And that way you can kind of think about, well, is it still accessible? What else can I do to improve accessibility? And then we can even see that there are PDF checklists and other tips. So a lot of these sites and the Sakai learning environment for universal design, they have a lot of these kind of tools conveniently in one place for you. So one thing I want to quickly mention is accessibility and library databases. And I do want to say when it comes to databases that a lot of vendors, such as EBSCOhost as being a big one, have commitments to accessibility. But that being said, there are still issues. And again, technology, browser issues, compatibility. So sometimes issues will arise. And I'm just going to focus on EBSCOhost for a moment because a lot of students might be using Academic Search Complete, and EBSCO has a whole suite of databases. They will even acknowledge that when you search the database, most of the PDFs will be compatible, meaning that they can be read by a screen reader. They'll open up also in EBSCO's PDF reader. That being said, there might be older PDFs that they have scanned previously that might not be as cooperative. So there are certain cases when we might have to think about making a PDF from a database more accessible. So other suggestions, they talk about opening an Adobe Reader. And another thing, if we're thinking about ebooks or PDFs with images, not all those images might have tags or alternative text. So in that case, someone using a screen reader might not be able to get a sense of what the image is or how it contributes to the content. There's also some limited HTML narration where articles, mainly those from magazines or newspapers, have been placed in a simplified web format. but then, that's also very limited. One thing, I'm going to go ahead and pull up an article for a second. So we can see with this guy right here that I have my PDF, and I can also download it and print it. But I also wanted to take a brief moment and just talk a little bit about copyright. When it comes to permissions, databases like EBSCOhost, and this one's in Academic Search Complete, they have permission from the publisher to provide access to subscribers to this database. That being said, EBSCO does not hold the copyright for this article. If I wanted copyright permission in that case, I would have to contact Library Journal and see what their use rights are. So when it comes to me finding a PDF that would work well to add to my Sakai class, usually the best piece of advice is to not upload the PDF to Sakai, but to use a persistent link. And so there's a little permalink icon, stable link, you name it. And for some reason, it's not opening for me right now, probably because I'm timed out. So you'd want to copy that link and then add that link to Sakai. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One reason is kind of a guarantee that when you have that linked material, students then will click on that link and then be prompted to authenticate to show that they are a subscriber, right? And that's kind of the unfortunate kind of data capitalism there, that we want people to get these kind of learning resources as long as they subscribe or pay for that content, which is kind of unfortunate. But another significant reason why the advice is to use a persistent link is that with this kind of content, it's not always permanent. There might be a time when a publisher or a journal or a newspaper decides to remove their content, or they might switch vendors. And so in that case, I can lose access. So it's always a good idea to check your links each term, semester, quarter, whatever system you're on, just to make sure that the links are still active. So any questions? I'm gonna pause for a moment. Any questions about that when it comes to using permalinks? Okay, so I'll go ahead and close that one. So if we're also thinking about PDFs, I guess the big question is, if I have a PDF, is it accessible? So different things that we can keep in mind. Not all PDFs are readable by screen readers. What can happen is that I might have a scan, or I've made a copy from a book. And what happens is that it creates an image-based PDF. So if it's just one image, that means that a screen reader is not able to read each separate word. Whereas an accessible PDF, it does have the ability, that nice clean surface layer text that a reader can access. So how do you know? How can you tell? Well, there's actually a very easy way to see whether or not your PDF is accessible. So let's see, let me close some of these. So here I have my little social justice identity article. And if I'm able to just run my mouse or touchpad over this and highlight words, in this case, I can see that it is accessible, at least in this reader. And I can even go ahead and open it in Adobe Acrobat. That's another way you can test it. by using that program too. So always keep that in mind. And usually it's the big concern if you have materials that, especially since many face-to-face teachers are now teaching remotely in online classrooms due to COVID, usually we're just used to passing out just hard copies of materials. But in this case, if I'm in a hurry and I did a scan, it might not be accessible to all readers. So what happens when we get to that point? So luckily there are a number of different tools. I'm just going to highlight Read and Write Gold. Of course, like Adobe Pro can help, but I do want to mention that all of us have access to Read and Write Gold. And in case you're wondering what Read and Write Gold is, it's an accessibility software, and it has a lot of different functions, actually, text to speech. And as Bonnie mentioned, it could make reading PDFs a lot easier. You can make adjustments to the screen, to the text. We can think of people who have dyslexia, or someone who has English as a second language could even benefit from using this kind of tool. So I'm going to click on this link and just show you that we actually have a library guide on Read and Write if you're interested. And as you can see, it is available free of charge to Antioch students, staff, and faculty. I highly recommend that everyone download it because it is easy to use, and it's something that you can learn how to use and then share this with your students, regardless of any ability or need. I think anyone can use this. And you'll also see that there are tips for PC and tips for the Mac.
I've used it recently to try to read aloud a couple of syllabi. They often have long, complicated tables, and if the things don't go in order, they don't make sense when they're read aloud. So I've just opened up Read, Write, and Gold, or opened up the document, the PDF, and it prompts me now that I've downloaded Read, Write, and Gold, do you want to read this aloud? And I click yes, and it'll start reading through the document, and I can tab to different sections. And if it goes well, then no worries. And if something skips out of order, then I know just to make a change in the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's a lot of good reasons to use it. So I'm going to reduce my screen for a moment, and let me just go ahead and show you where I do have a PDF here that is not, and let me move all this stuff out of the way, that is not accessible. And it's actually just an image file. And so you can see I'm moving my mouse over it and it's not highlighting anything. So if I have Read and Write Gold on my computer, I can actually use a function for scanning this document. And I'll just click on this, and I will select my document, and then I'll scan it. And now the scan is in process.
You can tell that this is an image PDF because one of the lines is cut off at the bottom, and it's not exactly straight in the margins. That's a quick eyeball check. If anything is cockeyed, the whole page is cockeyed, then you're pretty sure it's a scanned photo PDF and not a text PDF.
Oops, I just scanned it. All right, let's give it one more scan. So once it scans, it will be able to identify the characters. And then once that happens, I can play it, listen to it, and just some of the other features, you can even look up words in here, which is really nice. And a couple different things. If I do have a copy of a PDF that I scanned, you'll have to keep in mind that there could be some challenges if it's not a precise copy. Maybe if I have some words kind of running off the page. So there might be other times when you'll have to maybe edit or clean up the PDF as well. So you got to be really careful that you have a really clean scan, or else it's not going to work as well. And I won't open this one right now. There we go. And so this is the one that we just scanned. And you can see now, oops, preparing it. It's accessible and can be read by a reader. But again, it's fairly easy. The learning curve for this is not too steep. And Bonnie, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to you. And one thing I want to mention with the rest of the PowerPoint, Bonnie will be posting the slides, and the slides have links to these resources. And also, what's great is that Bonnie's going to be going through some things, and the slides also include step-by-step instructions for you to follow, because I don't expect everyone to commit it to heart during this time. But if you have other questions, let us know. Okay, Bonnie, take it away.
All right. I want to give people a chance to think for a second and see if they had any questions about the scanning of the PDF or other challenges you might run into with your PDF. So after you've scanned it, Dana, you can just save it as as a PDF, but this time your new version that you've scanned is going to be accessible. It's not going to be that printed. So if you have some copied PDFs that are just images in your course from last semester and you're going to be teaching next semester, all you have to do is open each one and scan it and read and write and turn it into an accessible PDF. Now, Wendy had a question. She asked for a link. Were you looking for a link to Read and Write Gold, or were you looking for a link to the slides?
To the download for Read Write Gold.
Okay. Yep, it's right in AU Direct in the services menu. There's that puzzle piece purple icon that you can click on from AU Direct.
And I'll go ahead and add the link to the library guide on Read and Write.
That'd be great. Thank you, because I don't want to switch over well.
Sure, you are very welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So feel free to come back to PDF questions if you think of them later. I'm going to share my screen and show you my 3 favorite places for downloading free images that you can use for your courses or for other nonprofit items. So the easiest place that we all tend to look is Google Images. But Google Images are searched and collated from sites all over the place, and they're not legal to use just because they're in Google Images. People did not submit them to Google Images and say, okay, I'm giving this to the world and you're all allowed to use it now. You should assume that if you found something in there, that it's not copyright free unless you use the special tools Google Images gives you. So, for example, my favorite example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We always like these charts that show the concepts that help people understand them a little bit better. And it's very hard to diagram and make these charts yourselves. If you have them in a textbook that your students have bought, no problem. You can usually get those images from the textbook publisher. But if not, or if it's easier, which I find it is, start by searching Google Images. And here under the tools, Google has a usage rights drop-down box so that you can choose just show Creative Commons licenses. Now that's one easy way, but my favorite images are actually from Wikimedia Commons, because Wikimedia Commons makes it extremely easy for you to use their images. You don't have to download them. You don't have to upload them into Sakai. All you have to do is link to them and copy the attribution that they give you to paste in. So I'll walk through that process. When I went down to Creative Commons licenses, You can see many of these are from Wikimedia, and that's going to happen often. And if you can choose one from Wikimedia because it's one you like, please do, because they're the easiest. So after you've clicked it, if you click on the image itself, it'll bring you to the page that that image is on in Wikimedia Commons. And these are the tools that Wikimedia Commons gives you for inserting these files on your own. These step-by-step directions are in the slides, and they'll also be in the recording. Now you could download this image. You could copy the attribution they want you to use. You could upload it into Sakai or into some other tool that you need it and use it like that. And that's fine, but there's a lot of steps. Wikimedia Commons has this use this file dialog box, which makes it much, much easier. The two things that you need are the file URL and the attribution. And I usually like to be in Firefox to do this, and I'll show you why in a moment. So the first thing I do if I want to use this image, I copy the file URL. I just did Control-C. You can do highlight and right-click copy. Don't copy the page URL. That URL will just bring you to this whole page. And then if you're in your course, you can add it to an existing text block. You can add it to your overview. You can put it in a forum, like in the long description box or in an assignment in the long description box, anywhere you have editor window. So for example, I can just add a text block to this lessons page. And usually I put in a couple of returns around the image so I can move it around. I click the image icon on the toolbar. And this URL bar, I'm just right click, pasting in the URL to that image. Don't need to download it, don't need to rename it. I don't have to go through the browse server to upload it to my resources. To give it some alternative text, and this is for browsers that don't show images, they'll show this text instead. This text will not show to people who see the regular image. So if you also need a caption, we always recommend you use the caption checkbox here for your attribution, and if you want to describe the image because the image needs some sort of additional caption. And I tend to left justify if it's by itself, or right justify if you're going to put text around it. When you say okay, it puts that image in your page and it leaves this place for your caption. Now, if I jump back here in Chrome and I try to copy this text right here, Chrome, when I let go, it doesn't let me have it. So what I do is I should have started this process in Firefox. So I go to the page in Firefox. Again, use this file. Firefox lets me copy this. And by copying this, I don't have to build any links. I don't have to write any text. I just copy this bit. I jump back into Sakai and I paste it where the caption was. You'll see that the links come over. I've captioned it exactly the way Wikimedia Commons wants me to. I don't have to worry that I haven't attributed it properly, and I don't have to do much work at all. Scroll. Go ahead.
Bonnie, I'm going to just interrupt for a moment. We have a question about what happens if you embed the file. Would you be able to take us through that process?
Sure. If you have the URL in your, so if you copy the file URL, and jump back in, let's say you wanted to embed it after this, I could add embed content on the page, and I put the URL in here, and I hit save.
So it looks like in Sakai you have the option to use the URL or the code, the embed code.
You
So
could
either or
embed code, but with a plain image where you have the file name and the link, you don't need to do any extra work of copying the embed code. The challenge, what I don't like about this image, about embedding images most of the time, you can't put it, if you wanted to add text above it or below it, you have to add a new text box above it or new text box below it. You can't wrap any text around it. And you can't, you don't have an active attribution. You see, there's nowhere to put the attribution here. You can put, let me go back to Firefox, copy the attribution again. You have to come back into a second step, put in the attribution. That didn't, my copy didn't work. And then you have to put the attribution in here. You can come back here. You can also change the size in here if you need to. And that's easy if all you're doing is a list of images that they might need or something like that. But if you need to place it, align it to the right, align it to the left, doing it in a text box gives you more control. But
very helpful, Bonnie. And Wendy, great question.
Yeah, you'll see the links to the attribution don't work when you put them in that item description. I'm okay with that. You okay with that, Dana, in terms of it attributing it? We've got the attribution text. We just don't have the attribution links in here.
That also works.
So Allison said when she clicks on tools, you're not getting the that option. So let me jump back to here. I'm going to go back to, when I click tools, my tools appeared down here, size, color, type, time, Creative Commons, or license, it says usage rights.
And mine, when I click on tools, I have two things. I have anytime and all results. And when I click on all results, I'm either getting, I'm not getting those same options.
Now, are you in Google Images or just google.com?
Images.
Okay. Can we look
Oh, I just changed something, Bonnie, and I figured it out.
Okay.
I just figured it out. Thanks.
Okay. I'd love to see that though, in case other people I hear running into that same problem. Okay. So if you use a Wikimedia image, I find those the easiest to use. They have a huge catalog, lots of options, and they're relatively professional. You're not going to get a lot of junky images. So that's my top choice. And you can just come to commons.wikimedia.org and search there, or you can go to Google Docs and narrow it down, Google Images. The other option is if you come across a Creative Commons image that you like that isn't on Wikimedia Commons, you can go to that site and look at their licensing and attribution requirements and just do the attribution manually. For example, my other favorite site for free digital photos, for photos particularly, this isn't necessarily for chart images, is freedigitalphotos.net, because almost all of their regular images have a free version. It's a smaller picture, but it's plenty big for our course websites. So you can search for anything like New Hampshire ecology, depending on what you're teaching, wetlands ecology. Typically there are, I did something a little different last time. Dessert, very generic. At the top, they return their premium images, of course, to get you to pay for something. But as soon as you jump down below this bar, these are all images that have a free version. And when you click on one, like lovely green cake, you'll see at the top of the list, they have a standard license for free. I'll show you the one I found earlier. Let's say I wanted to use this one. This is where you would do your usual process. You can click on this attribution required and read about it. But their download process is super easy. You accept their terms and conditions, you type in your email address, and then you tell them you're not a robot. You hit download. Now, in addition to downloading this, it doesn't actually download the image right away, but it does just send you an email. So you can archive that email so that you can use this over and over. I'll show you. the email I got from Free Digital Photos. And what I like about this is it puts the exact attribution that they want you to use right in the email, so you can copy it and use it if you can get your mouse to cooperate. So the first thing I do is click the download the image. And I highly recommend you give these images names. Hand holding globe.jpg, so that they're human readable, so that when they land in your Sakai resources folder, you know what image that is and which page you probably put it on. And then I just copy this image attribution that they write for you. And all they require is that you say the name of the owner, which is the username freedom at freedigitalphotos.net. And again, you can put in a text block. You can embed it in the same way. This time, when you add the image, you click your image icon, you have to go through the browse server process. And that just means you open your Sakai course folder and you go into the resources where you want this folder to land. And then you click on this disk icon to select the file that you just downloaded. And hand holding globe is right here. It uploads it. And when it's done, it highlights it blue and you just say, okay. Same thing. Make sure that there's an alt text. Pick the size and pick the way you want it aligned, and turn on the captioned image so that you get this lovely little caption box. And I can just right click in here and paste in, or control paste, the exact attribution that that site wanted me to use. Between Wikimedia Commons and Free Digital Photos, I've been able to find a useful image for most occasions that I've used it. We have a list of 20 other sites that you can look at, free Embed Images and things like that, but they tend to be smaller collections. And if you have to search 4 or 5 places, or 5 or 10 places, it just makes it harder to find. If you can go to a place where there's easy to search and find a lot of images, it's a lot simpler. So always, of course, remember to save your page. Does anybody want me to redo any of those steps, answer any questions, do a search on some of these sites to see if you can find something that would work for your class?
No, but this is really helpful.
I'm glad. So just because we've done a tutorial on this and we have this video that'll be posted on the YouTube channel, doesn't mean you still can't email us the first time you try to do this. So we can help walk you through or help you troubleshoot if anything happens. But if you need help walking through converting a PDF, or finding out if your PDF is accessible or as accessible as it can be, or finding images, feel free to email us at AT. We'll be here to help you. I know Patty, when she works with the AUO faculty, a lot of faculty have to upload the image they want to use on certain pages into her template. This is a great place to go find images, and maybe we can put these notes, just link to these notes in the template, Patty, so that people can get instructions on, a reminder on where to find.
It looks like you have a question from David. And David, are you asking if the freedigitalphotos.net, whether or not students can use it too?
It's open to the whole world. You don't have to be logged in. You don't have to be an educational user. Basically what they're doing is they're giving you a free version, which is the smallest size that they have available. And you can, if you use it with attribution, it's legal. If you don't want to show the attribution, you can pay $3 to use it. So it's sort of they get the step up. They'll give you the free product. Or then if you wanted to say print a giant poster, this image is way too small for that. So you'd have to buy this high-res image for printing a giant poster, or putting on a sign or whatever you were going to use it for. but they're essentially a stock photography place that's open to the whole world.
And Christine just posted, students seem to really like sites like Unsplash that do not require and state it's not needed attribution, and that she appreciates how easy Wikimedia makes it for us to set a good example.
Yeah. There you go, Unsplash.
And I'll use sometimes Pixabay too. There's an amazing amount. I mean, there are library archives that have free images. You know, New York Public Library has quite a few as well. You could pull things from Project Gutenberg.
Yep.
Steve Shaw, and I respect this man's opinion as well. Pexels, did I say that right, Steve? Pexels?
All right, so there's Pexels. So I will say we have on the, I think it's on the Academic Technology website. We're currently in the process of merging all of our websites into one. We had them separated for a while. Under library and writing, we have a long list of royalty-free images, and Pixabay is on there, Unsplash is on there, Pexels is on there. And I think what I'll do is go through and I'll narrow this down to the ones that may be less useful and amp up those ones that you guys have amplified that you've actually found useful. Because it's more
And we do have a tutorial, a workshop that Bonnie and I did on free images that you can also watch, that has been recorded. And so that we'll talk about a couple of them. I think we have also videos on digital media too, ebooks, you name it. But if outside of academic technology, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the resources you can find through the library, there's such a wealth of information from journals, magazines, newspapers, ebooks. We can always set up a time to Zoom and see how we can hook your course up with some of these materials.
So we have about 15 more minutes for questions on topic or off, or if you'd like us to share another example or walkthrough of anything. Otherwise, the gift of 15 minutes is yours. Abby, will